Follow Dear Normal Public and Professors Peach Alvarez, Fat Nicolombo, and Mariano Swakbart. We will proceed to talk about issues related to the future based on demographic data and plausible theories about society in the future in both economic, health and educational approaches. Assuming that you understand what we have just said, we advise and recommend that viewers from this moment do not pretend to hear what we say by staring at the screen. Thank you for your understanding.
Do you think that the following generations will generate a change of the better or a change for the worse? To ensure that the first alternative is really the new generations, should we guarantee education, knowledge, values, and above all support in every sense, since they are logically the future humanity. This may initially sound redundant, since the aforementioned arrangements in most countries around the world, but not putting into practice this knowledge could result in an empty promise for young people. This goal will achieved with more open relations between needy countries and the rest of the world, such as, for example, several regions of Africa whose income was for a long time based on foraging initiative in relation to indigenous resources that generated a national dependence on these industries. Having a more open trade with the world will therefore mean more movement of people from different cultures and these to the different cultures called conflicts. Families have reduced in number over time, but currently Europe and North America are the only countries where women have on average less than 2 babies in their lifetime, and the population continues to increase worldwide. Fortunately, the UN estimates that the speed of population growth is no longer subject to the unprecedented and unsustainable acceleration of the past country, but humanity will continue to grow with 80 million people each year. In 2050, the Earth will have 8 billion inhabitants. Like now, almost a fifth of the future population will concentrate a single country, but this time it will be with China. India will be the most populous nation, capturing 17% of the people in 2050. This data is linked to the abrupt reduction in mortality that will be observed above all in less developed countries. It is precisely for countries such as India, Nigeria, the Republic of the Congo, and Pakistan, which lead the world population growth rate, and the reason may be that they may maintain large families what increasingly enjoy a higher life expectancy. In the future, as it has always, when the number of the world population will increase, as we have already mentioned, but there could also be various changes in the population density of various countries. For example, the case of Japan, and its population is likely to have a great impact in the future. From 2008 onwards, winds and death in Japan have had a worrying relationship, as death practically exceed winds, which means that its population is reducing, in addition to the fact that it is also killed all. What happens there is that most of the feline population in Japan are numerous and are made up of adult women, while most of the Malay population are made up of young and adult men. Also, a large percentage of men prefer to perform better in various activities, including their jobs, more to socialize, so they therefore choose not to have a family. It is no mystery that in today's world there are many poor countries. An example of this is Uganda. This country has a population wall life expectancy is estimated at 41 years due to the fact that more than a third of the population lies below the poverty line. Added to the new increases in HIV, SLANs, AIDS infections which consequently cause 1.8 million of the 2.6 million children to the one orphans caused beside disease.
The COVID-19 virus affects the whole world due to a lack of prior preparation by governments. This situation could be useful so that in the future there are certain precautions to avoid such situations in the first place and actions to take to avoid spreading them. In the field of public health, there is good and bad news. On the one hand, devastating diseases such as AIDS are becoming less of threat every day, thanks to advances in treatment and prevention. However, some of infectious diseases that are now under control could become really dangerous, given the explosion in antibiotic resistance. In addition, as life expectancy increases and the population ages, the incidence of dangerous age-related conditions will increase, such as cardiovascular disease, the current leading cause of death, or Alzheimer's. The World Health Organization warns that dementia cases will triple by 2050 and urgently calls for a greater research effort and aid for patients and their caregivers. AIDS, the disease caused by HIV, is no longer among the top 10 causes of death. It still claims nearly a million lives a year, and on AIDS, it is leading the global effort to end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. It is a problem solver. It places people living with HIV and people affected by the virus at the decision-making table and at the center of designing, delivering, and monitoring the AIDS response. AIDS estimates that some 36.7 million people are living with the virus. There is no cure, but a study by the British Columbia Centre of Excellence in HIV/AIDS in Canada predicted a decade ago that it's already in our power to stop the transmission of the epidemic, simply by treating all infected people with antiretrovirals. The only problem is the immense cost of this intervention. Beyond these predictions, there is a recent and growing problem that, along with climate change, is leading the international public health discussions: superbugs. It is not an exaggeration to say that antibiotic-resistant infections will outnumber other epidemics that we know of in death, and probably in cost. The bacteria that survive our abuse of antibiotics generate new strains capable of resisting traditional drugs. Simple infections that could have been treated a few years ago today cause about 700,000 deaths annually. Experts consider projections that reach 10 million deaths in 2050 if nothing is done to remedy this crisis. Have you ever thought that your job is at risk of disappearing? Did you know that in Japan a robot can work as a maid in a hotel? For example, drivers, particularly taxi drivers, could be replaced by self-driving cars. Another example may be people who work in supermarkets and in banks as cashiers. They are at risk. It's also the case of people who work in factories where they are dedicated to assembling cars because there are already robots that can do that. And surely there will be for many more industries. Printed newspapers are also an example of this. Today there are people who still read them, especially older people. But for young people it is already common to search for news on the internet, which in our opinion will make printed newspaper disappear little by little in the future.
Regarding education, we think that in the future, the ways of transmitting knowledge can change. It shouldn't be learned by heart, since with the passing of years, what has been learned is forgotten. So we believe that more importance should be given to practice. To the questions that each student can ask, and to the development of each one of them. We as a society should create a safer environment so that situations such as street harassment are ended. As we know, it is more seen in poorer places with less education. We can see this clearly in Argentina, where the main victims are women who cannot go out on the streets calmly. If in the future this not happen again, it will be a great and positive change for our society. We believe that it should be strongly condemned illegally. We believe that such acts should be vigorously condemned in a legal way, for example with harsher penalties, and socially so that those who intend to do so think twice. We also consider that in future more emphasis should be placed on sexual education, which is the beginning to be done little by little, for example with talks in schools. But we believe that it's still not enough, because when society or school does not provide such information, many act without knowing, and there are many cases, for example, of teenage pregnancies. However, it is important to say that this should be accompanied by a change in mentality, which allows these issues to be discussed in a more naturally and not continue being difficult to address, especially in families. In regard to health, it must appeal to a wider range of people. This based on technological and medical advances that could lead to a lower production in costs and, together with more open relationships between different countries, will create to being more accessible in all countries of the world. Areas of the world that are currently considered isolated can be open to the world in the future thanks to technology. This will also help to promote industrialization and thus increase production and therefore supply of technological products, therefore resulting in a cheaper products as well. This also has other benefits such as the creation of new jobs, more access to new technologies, and it also helps connect all the inhabitants of the planet Earth to each other even more. We can say then that the globalization we are experiencing today will be surely multiplied in the future. In the talk, both the positive and negative aspects of the impact that different industries, institutions or problems are likely to have on the population that inhabit this planet in the future are based on evidence and speculation. However, we cannot be certain about anything, especially when the time factors comes into play. Even we knew everything about the present, it will be impossible to know what will happen next. We do not live in a world of rules, but probabilities. Nevertheless, some events are more likely to happen than others. The core of this talk, for example. As another example, it's almost certain that in the next few seconds this video will end.